and Charles Davis joining us there this morning. Charles, that's I'm sure the way you were looking to wake up this morning with our mock draft song.
Oh, listen, there's nothing better than a mock draft song, and this time of year you hear a few of them, but yours, top of the list, no question.
Top notch. I appreciate it. Well, I want to ask you first off this. So you just recently did a piece on NFL.com about players you'd pound on the table for, and one of them was a local kid, Brevin Jordan, who we've been watching down here in Miami for years, and has been tremendously talented. What is it about him that you really like, and what makes you think he's going to be a fantastic pro? Because we haven't heard much of him going into the draft.
Yeah, you guys know what it's like this time of year. As you finish your seasons in a normal year. Obviously, a COVID year is even crazier, right? But you finish your seasons, and now we start the process. So all year long during a season, a player who is a talented player, as a general rule, is praised, right? Oh, this kid is dynamic. Because let's face it, when we're getting ready to do ball games, if you're a broadcaster, you want people to watch your game. This kid is the best player in the country at his position. May not be, but you try and get into that range where it sounds right and it has some legitimacy. But then the draft process starts, and now the nitpicking begins. He didn't comb his hair the right way. He didn't tie his shoes the right way. He didn't do this. He didn't do that. And I'm being, facetious to an extent, but you guys understand that everything that they get in the draft process is not going to be praised. When he ran 4.67 at his pro day, and I know he was disappointed, a lot of people said, athleticism, can he do this? Can he do that? I turn on the film, and I'm watching him run one-on-one routes. I'm watching him run in the seams. I'm watching him catch the ball, break tackles, gain additional yardage. I think there's a lot there. He plays faster than 4.67 on tape. He's put up numbers throughout his career. There's a lot there to like, and I just think that in a draft that's not heavy on tight ends, yet the tight end position is increasing in value in the NFL. He's the type of guy who's going to find a home and be a valuable player.
Charles, is it amazing to you? One of the things that is just it kills me to no end is that we watch 2-3 years of these athletes and watch them either dominate or compete at a high level for 2 or 3 years. And then we take them out of their football environment, run a couple of tests, and deem him not to be a good player. It is I'm shocked at people that have been around football this much, and you see him running guys now. They testing the other guys too. So when you have this star linebacker that runs a 4.5 or a 4.4, and you see Brevin Jordan running by him, dominating the field, you're going to test both of them and give the linebacker a better grade.
Yeah, and I think if you're doing that, you're probably not doing a great job of scouting. And I say that with respect to the scouting community because I'm not one of them. And so I don't want them to, oh, yeah, sure, you don't do what we do each and every day. But I think that they would tell you the same thing. The art part of scouting is understanding how to watch what you've watched on tape, see what you've seen in person, and mash that with testing. Just in your shorts, here we go. And it's the same standard test across the board. What do you see during that, and how much of an impact do you give it? How much does it take you? And we can go to extremes, and we can also just go to the midpoint. And I'd say that right now we're talking about a midpoint with Brevin Jordan, just what you said. You've watched him on tape. You've watched him run away from people. You've watched him play faster than what he timed that day. And remember, you don't get 2 shots at it this year. Normally you get the combine and you get your pro day. So if your combine doesn't go well, you get your pro day. If your pro day didn't go well, hopefully your combine was better. And those things carried the day. This year was 1 shot at it, and if your biorhythms are off, you're messed up. But if your tape's really good, is that going to take you out of the game? Probably not. Greg Rousseau is going to be another guy. Did not test well coming off of an opt-out year. But you turn on the tape from 2 years ago, and as a scout told me the other day, I can't unsee what I saw in 2019. That was really good. So How do I balance that? How do I correlate it in a COVID year? Not everybody came back and was at the top of their game. Do I hold that totally against him? Does it knock him down a few spots? Or do I continue to pound the table and say, if we get a shot at this kid, we better go get him?
How do you think that is going to play into some GM's mind? Because when we heard Chris Greer locally down here, he kind of no-sold it. He doesn't really worry about guys who opted out. I think it was the Steelers GM I read the other day. He's like, if it's two guys who are equal, I don't think guys necessarily get better not playing football. Where do you stand on that? Do you think that if you're running a front office and a guy is amazing, but he did sit a year out in a sport like football, would that be any level of concern for you, or does it have to be like, does it have to be a major gap between the two for you to consider an opt-out guy and not taking him above a guy who did play that maybe you necessarily don't think is better?
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be a major gap because the opt-out for this year, and we've learned opt-out over the last 10 years or less for different reasons. It started with, do I play in bowl games? Which was the age-old question anyway, but no one had ever really bucked the system. You know what I mean? Should I be playing in the, Gillette, Oil, whatever, such and such bowl? And if I get hurt, there goes, me in the pros. Remember Jake Butt, the tight end from Michigan? Played in the Orange Bowl. Yeah. This is Florida State. And he was supposed to be, a second-round guy? Mm-hmm. And he hurts his knee, and he hasn't really been the same since. And that's unfortunate. But he took the opportunity to play. He had his option. He didn't do it. That's why people quit criticizing kids who opted out for doing that. And it didn't hurt when guys like Christian McCaffrey were some of the leaders that said, I'm not going to play in the bowl game. Because when a clean-cut kid from Stanford all of a sudden values his pro career, it must be important now. Yeah, maybe I won't criticize as much. Well, COVID year, same thing. You got people who had families, had family members who were susceptible, didn't want anything to happen. Things did happen with them. They opted out, decided not to play. So I think the gap has to be big for most of these teams for it to make that big of a deal. But it does make for heavy discussion when a Greg Rousseau looks so dynamic in 2019, goes to his pro day, and doesn't look the same guy that you saw on tape. And really, there was a difference between what we saw on tape and what we saw on his pro day. How much of that is just him rounding back into form? And did we miss by what we saw on tape? So that's what the scouts will be discussing there.
Well, Charles, it also, and I know how I felt about that it's not really that big of a deal to me if it's the Gillette Bowl, but if those bowls start becoming more big time, so Jake Butt did it in the Orange Bowl.
As you know, you really weren't getting opt-outs in the college football playoffs.
Right.
If teams were in the Final Four, the opt-outs really didn't exist. You didn't hear about, hey, Clemson's coming to play in the college football semifinals, and Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, and those guys are not going to play. No, they play. So you're right. The bigger the bowl game, playing for national championships, kids tended to play. But below that, that's where the opt-outs really kicked in. Sorry about that.
Now here's the biggest question down here. Okay? You've been around football long enough. I've been around it for a while also. Devonta Smith weighing 166 pounds. Okay? Yeah. Now, I have people coming at me with all these small receivers. And I'm not saying that Devonta Smith is not going to be a great player. But at 166 pounds, he's not going to be nowhere near the top of the draft for me. Just because that is one measurable that I can't necessarily say will translate at the next level when you're dealing with guys that are bigger and stronger than you across from you. And so what are your feelings on that? Because a lot of people say, oh, no, he won the Heisman, no big deal. I'm like, there have been Heisman Trophy winners that didn't get drafted high. Let's not make that assumption that just because they won the Heisman that they are a clear-cut NFL player.
Yeah, it's an excellent point, and it's one that I think a lot of people are going to grapple with depending on the organization. I still think he's going to go top 15 of the draft. I'd be surprised if he didn't because of the production, because of the play in a big-time conference. And when he lost all the people around him, because Bama for the last 2 years. I mean, last year they put out Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy. This year it was Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle. So they had plenty of guys, but he was the last guy standing. So he was running those routes and winning the Heisman where he was the featured guy where coverages were kicked to him, the whole deal. I think that part of the problem with him weighing in at 166 has been recovering from the finger injury in the bowl game. I don't think he's been in the weight room, and lifting. I think some of that has come off of him. I think people are going to have to make that determination. Can he hold up versus competition? And if you are bullish on him, Leroy, you know what you're going to say? Remember Marvin Harrison coming out of Syracuse? He barely weighed 170-something pounds. And if you're not bullish on him, you're going to point to all the small receivers that have struggled in the league that look good on paper but don't give you the performance that you really need. They either don't hold up or for whatever reason the numbers just aren't there. And there are plenty of those examples along the way too.
Yeah, but if I'm drafting that high, I don't want to draft an exception.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
it's like,
what's the old expression? If you draft a lot of exceptions, that's what you have. A team of exceptions. Right. You got to know when you're going to take that opportunity to pick one. Otherwise, then you got a team of it just doesn't work. So I understand where you're coming from.
Charles, in your mock draft that you put out, you have the Dolphins getting Kyle Pitts. Do you think things are going to shake out that way with 4 quarterbacks going early and he'll have an opportunity to be there for Miami? Because obviously everybody down here wants a shiny new weapon for Tua Tagovailoa to help him out on offense. So Kyle Pitts has been all the rage, but there's questions about whether or not he's even going to fall to Miami. How do you think this whole thing plays out on Thursday?
Yeah, I wish I had that crystal ball because mine is so cloudy right now. And I have one more mock draft I have to turn in by tomorrow. Ooh. So that's part of the reason that we're talking at this hour because I've been up for a while, okay? I've been battling and scratching and writing in this name and changing that name and the whole deal. The way I'm leaning now, and again, what does it matter which way I lean? But the bottom line is this. I see 3 quarterbacks right off the top. Now, the third quarterback, is it Mac Jones or is it someone else? Okay? I'm kind of leaning towards Trey Lance. So now we get to 4 with Atlanta. I had them taking a quarterback last time. This time, I may very well have them take Kyle Pitts. And if Kyle Pitts goes at 4, now you come back with Cincinnati at 5. And what if they decide to take Jamar Chase? Now I'm sitting there with Miami at 6. If you want the explosive players, probably Jalen Waddle, the wide receiver from Alabama. So that's kind of, this is one of the exercises we all do. Now, what if I go back and go 4 quarterbacks? Then Jamar Chase is probably sitting there. Pitts may be sitting there. I really, truly don't know. I'm going to have to put it down on paper before long and just live with it. But it is a heck of a discussion because San Francisco at 3 changes everything as far as I'm concerned. It's not just Atlanta at 4. It's San Francisco at 3. Because if it's Mac Jones at 3, that changes what other teams are going to do behind them. If it's Trey Lance at 3, the market changes because I don't think as many teams want to come up for Mac Jones as they might come up for Trey Lance or Justin Fields. So this is going to be a fun one to watch. I can't wait till we actually get there. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready for the run-up to be over, and let's do it for real.
Hey, Charles, so real quick, I've always wondered if you have 4, 5 quarterbacks who are considered who have high grades in this year's draft.
Yeah.
And you're Atlanta. Do you have to jump on one of those, or do you think that you can just wait until next year? Like there's going to be quarterbacks in every draft because what ends up happening is these teams pass on them and then they end up with reaching on a quarterback for the next 5 years.
Yeah. I think that for Atlanta, the issue is much more their salary cap problems, Leroy. I think that they are really up against it that way. And that's part of why I think we're hearing the Julio Jones discussion, because that would give them some cap relief. Matt Ryan's contract is big. I mean, it's a big number. And there's also part of the old – you guys remember when Leon Hess owned the Jets? and he fired Pete Carroll after one season. They're like, why'd you fire after one season? He said, I'm too old. I can't wait for a championship. We have to get it right now. And he hired Richie Kotite, and they went right down the tubes. And he never saw that championship come. There is a school of thought that for Mr. Arthur Blank, hey, I don't have a whole lot of time to wait on this thing. We were close before. Matt Ryan was our guy. Let's build around it, and let's go right now. And that could be why they would take a Pitts or someone else at 4 instead of going ahead and doing that. Now, also, the last option is if you're Atlanta, you have needs in a few places. You might be able to drop back a few spots, get who you want anyway, and build up your team, and someone else comes up and gets that quarterback. And when we've heard that discussion before about people trying to get up there, what if Denver gets bold and says from 9, I got to move up and get a guy because Drew Lock's not my guy? What if they become that team? What if Detroit surprises us at 7 and says, I want a quarterback? Carolina surprises us at 8. Yeah, we got Sam Darnold, but the contract's not that big. And they do have an owner in David Tepper who's been jumping up and down all offseason. I want a franchise quarterback. So these quarterbacks are in a great spot right now, but I think it has to be the right quarterback. And I think Mac Jones' his options are a little bit limited in terms of San Francisco seems to be specific about him, but if they pass on him, who's next is that specific about Mac Jones versus Trey Lance or Justin Fields? That's the question that's in my mind.
Charles Davis, thanks so much for taking some time to join us this morning. Good luck finishing out your mock draft, and thanks so much for getting up with us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Charles.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Continued success to you both.